In today's social media environment, we have access to more information than we had ever had before. And if you think about comics back in the 80s and the 90s, which a lot of people look at with fond memories, we didn't have information back then, and maybe we were happier. Is there a connection? Hey there, this is Perch. The funny thing about information is that the more you have of it, you're not always happy. There have been a lot of stories about this, like dystopian future type sci-fi stories about what happens when you get information. What happens when you get lots and lots and lots of information, and you kind of peel back the onion or peel back the curtain into your favorite hobbies, and you discover things you didn't really want to know. Well, that's kind of where comics are at. That's kind of where the world is at. Unfortunately or fortunately, and it's always weird to make a case for we're too informed because we aren't. There's still lots of things that go on in the background. There's lots of information we need, and the amount of misinformation and bad information out there is huge. So nobody in their right mind would say that we are overinformed. But one thing that is true is that because of all the information available all the time and the desire to get information, I mean, one of the things that is kind of a side effect, but a significant one in social media is, and you notice this with people who they go on vacation or they go on a cruise ship or an airline, or they go someplace where they don't have access to their social media. It drives people crazy. The inside. I mean, they have tests that have been done that people start to just kind of wig out, and it's kind of the same effect if you worked in an office and you would go on vacation for 2 weeks, but the culture inside that office was so toxic or so consuming that you found yourself not able to enjoy your vacation because you were wondering what was going on back at the office. And thankfully, quote unquote, with email and mobile phones and tablets and 5G cards and international roaming plans and everything else, you never need to be disconnected again. If you've got some money and you've got some technology, you can go anywhere in the world. You're going to have a connection. I mean, the funny story was up on Mount Everest that there are Wi-Fi hotspots at some of the camp locations. So I just want you to picture for a moment the lifelong dream. You're going to climb Mount Everest. You're going to make that trek, and you get up to the mountain, and hey, what do you know? You can check your Instagram. You can see what's going on. And it kind of always puts in perspective, by the way, whenever there's a big argument or thing raging on Twitter. I try and think, where is everyone right now? I mean, chances are they're in their homes or somewhere in their jobs or driving around. But are there people who are flying? Because that's been me. I've been in a plane and I've logged on to the Wi-Fi, and I've communicated on Twitter to people, and I always think how strange it is. Maybe that's just me. But how does this all relate to comics? Well, we have a lot more information than we had before. And the problem with more information is that you get a lot of misinformation. You can also draw a lot of the wrong conclusions from kind of random bits of data. And there's another guy who has a YouTube channel, Wes. It's Thinking Critical. So go to YouTube, look up Thinking Critical. I'll put the link somewhere in this video. I probably will not remember to do that, but I should. Somebody point that out to me. If you're not subscribed to that, he's a good guy. He has a really good in-depth way of looking at things and thinking about things, and it's another angle and another perspective. And I find that he and I often draw exactly the same conclusions, but from different data points, and I think that's pretty cool. But one of the things that he was pointing out in a recent video is that part of his job, his training, his background was to look at bits of information and draw conclusions and figure out what are misinformation campaigns versus real data. And I think the problem we have right now is, in particular for pop culture, there's a lot of excitement around it. There's a lot of advertising dollars around it. There's a lot of need for clicks. And the side effect we've gotten is that in a desperate attempt to fill pages, to get content, I mean, they say that if you're going to put up a news site, you need a minimum of 40 articles a day to feel relevant and to get the attention of advertisers and sponsors and everything else. So what do you do? Of course, you go out and you get whatever you can. It's why a lot of these clickbait articles are so terrible and make they're not news, but they have to fill those pages. They have to put those links up and they have to get those articles going. And unfortunately, it causes a lot of, junior detective behavior where we'll look at things and we'll start to draw conclusions. It's like, oh, recently DC kind of canceled some comics that had the Year of the Villain banner on them. And, they're going to resolicit the titles with a new cover because, they didn't want the Year of the Villain banner on there. And that instantly fueled a bunch of speculation. It's like, oh, it's DC's about to stealth cancel, Supergirl, and it's like, well, no, though they're not about to do that because they wouldn't be returning the comics at their cost and resoliciting them. That's not what's happening here. But it's this: we get little bits of data, and there's already a kind of a internal paranoia or belief that the comic industry is about to collapse, mostly thanks to a handful of kind of really loud voices on social media and YouTube who keep telling us that the entire comic industry is about to collapse in flames any second now. So people are kind of always looking for evidence to reinforce that view. And same thing goes the other way. It's kind of how we got into, for years, and it feels like back in the olden times, but back in 2017, the olden times, there was this big digital is king, and digital is going to save us, and digital is where all the action is, and digital is doing really, really well. And whenever you pushed a comic pro or an editor or a distributor or just somebody on that topic, they could never come up with any specifics. It was always super, super vague. It was always, well, why would they be? The question was answered to the question. It's like, why do you think digital is doing well? What proof is there that digital is doing well? And the answer back is, well, what evidence is there that digital is doing badly? It's like, that's not an answer. That's you answer. It's a question to a question. I remember actually for all the millennials out there, if you've read Harry Potter and you've gotten to the last book, the Deathly Hallows book, there's one scene in there that I think is some interior commentary that the writer would put in all the time about things she was dealing with in her life. And there is this character, Luna Lovegood's dad. I can't remember what his first name is. See, I'm not that much of a Harry Potter person, but I just have these moments that I can remember. So her dad is the heroes, the protagonists in the book. They go to seek out her dad because there's a mystery and they can't figure it out, and they think he may know the secret to this mystery. And they're kind of going over, hey, what do you think this is? And he immediately puts out what seems like an absurd answer. And Hermione goes, what? Well, how can you prove that? And he goes, how can you prove not that? And it's like, and they get into this circular argument. It's always stuck with me because it's very much indicative, very much how comic news and how commentary feels. It's like, we're not actually answering any of these questions. We're not actually solving anything. We're actually just, answering questions with questions and keep the loop going. But that's what a lot of things are right now. So we have a lot of little bits of data. We have a lot of pieces of information. We're kind of sifting through it every day, looking to draw conclusions of that. It's like, oh, Joe Q hasn't tweeted in a week. Oh, I think he's getting fired. And then very rapidly, kind of these rumors can take off from there. And so it gets back to, is all this information, all this access to data all the time a good thing? It is good to be informed, but a lot of what we're consuming and what we're given to consume is not information. It's just speculation, or in some cases, just garbage. It's just bits of data that are designed to just catch your eyeball for a moment. And that's the danger I think we have with comics and a lot of pop culture things right now, is that there's so much stuff out there that it's becoming harder and harder to sift through the real stuff versus the fake stuff, the stuff that actually matters and helps inform us and tell us what directions we should go into, and the stuff that is pure nonsense that's just there to fill pages that we're keying off of and then making decisions we shouldn't. I think that's the challenge we have right now is too much information. What do we do with it? And how do we sort between the good and the bad? And again, unfortunately, there's not a single major news source. This isn't a political thing. This isn't like, oh, it's liberal news or it's conservative news. No, it's all news. because the business model and the economics have been set up in such a way that you have to do this. You have to go for a glut of content to survive, unless you're some eccentric, wealthy, crazy Bruce Wayne billionaire and you're willing to fund these sites and lose money. And unfortunately, I mean, for comic news, these sites don't make money. I mean, there's very little cash that actually comes out of these sites. It's why they are the way they are. But the other problem we have is, even though people despise sites like Bleeding Cool, they still go to it because it has content. And so a couple people have tried to make little, websites with just news. And in reality, in comics, there's two, three, four news stories a day. There's just not enough news out there to have a super popular, intense, lots of news website. And so the sites that have done this and just stuck to the news, people go, oh well, they're not active. There's not enough there. So even the people that know that places like Bleeding Cool is just a bunch of garbage, they still go there because there's content. We're all feeding this. So there's a lot of information out there. We have to do a good job of sorting through it, gathering what's right, what's not, and making better decisions. But anyway, that's what I think. What do you think? What's your opinion on the matter? Leave me a comment below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. I don't like that. Hit the bell for notifications. Just sounds tacky. Just be notified or don't be notified. One of those. And like I said, leave me your comments below. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch. And thanks for listening.